Everybody smoking. You go to the barbecue, everybody got something to drink. Everybody got that cousin or auntie or uncle that, oh, he tripping again, right? And there's a stigma around addiction. You can't really ask for help, because no matter what it is you want, if you go past the level of drinking and smoking, like, oh, you a crackhead, oh yeah, crackhead Joe, crackhead Bob, oh man, there you go again, oh, crackhead Bob. Low key though, we have mental health issues. We're dealing with addiction, but we dismiss that because it's a shame to the family, or we dismiss that because, oh, there's so much other trauma to deal with. We don't got time for you and your addiction. Just control it. Just not do it. Just put it to the side. Just put it down. Why you can't put it down? You weak as hell. So we're not going to come out and say, look, I think I got this problem. I think I got this issue. I'm doing these things and I can't stop doing them. We're not going to say that, because then we'll be considered weak, especially as black men. I'm not going to tell you I'm struggling with drugs and alcohol. Why am I going to say that? You automatically going to think I'm weak. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to pretend like I got it all under control until I don't. I'm going to pretend like I got it all under control until it's to the point to where I can't hide it anymore. And then I'm labeled a crackhead. It's a crazy cycle. It's a crazy cycle. And I think what's important is that people speak up more about it. People speak up more about it and use their platform to speak up more about these things that exist so that we can destroy this shit. Hey, you feel that?
You are now tuned into You Feel That with Bryce the Third.
Welcome to another episode of You Feel That with Bryce the Third, the best podcast there is for high-level entrepreneurs looking to learn to master their emotions. Here's where we learn to become compassionate, understanding servant leaders one episode at a time. The big question is this: how do I, as an ambitious entrepreneur, learn to master my emotions in a way that allows me to continuously show up and do the next scary thing that could potentially take my career and life to the next level? I am, of course, your host, Bryce the Third, and today I want to get a little intimate with you all. I know I've mentioned quite a few times on the podcast about my own personal recovery journey and that I'm in recovery from substance use and alcoholism. And I think it's finally a good time. What recovery means to me, how it plays a role in my entrepreneurship and my creativity, my relationships, etc., etc. This will be a pretty off-the-cuff thing. I personally am 12-step, and there's been a lot of times where I've shared my personal recovery story in a 12-step setting, and every time I share my story, something new is shared, and there's something new that I can see that I've learned from, because the thing about recovery is a process that is continuously unfolding. It is not something that we do and get done. It is a way of life that when we tap into, there is always an increased quality of life, at least for me. And this is another thing that I've learned about recovery. Recovery is a self-defined thing. If you deem yourself in recovery, you are in recovery. There is no master of recovery. There is no master of a person continuing to increase the quality of their life. There is no master of, oh, I have a monopoly on how it is that you recover. Like, if you say you're in recovery, you're in recovery. And I've heard people say that everybody's in recovery from something. And the only thing that I would offer around that, or I won't say disagree with, but will be careful about that, is the beautiful power of being in recovery is once you say that you're in recovery, once you claim that this is your process of life, that's when it becomes yours. If somebody else tells you, oh, everybody's in recovery from something, so you're in recovery from, then it begins to be like this thing where, like, I ain't asked for that. That's not the life I chose. So I'm in recovery, and that's, where it begins and ends. And hopefully I can be an example of what it looks like to continuously seek to be intentional about increasing the quality of our lives. And I really want to make this episode because I felt that it was necessary for people who may be struggling with addiction, people who may be struggling with alcoholism and don't have that reference point of somebody that's cool as hell that is not using, or somebody that's black that is not using, or somebody that is young, like I'm 32 and is not using, so having a reference point allows for us to step into uncomfortable situations because we see see, oh, he has the courage to do it. Oh, they look like me. They come from where I come from, and they doing it. Not doesn't feel so inaccessible. So this is an episode that I felt has been really important to kind of get done, and I don't know why it's taking me so long. I think my recovery has evolved, and there's different ways that I do want to describe my experience on this show, and but it has to start now. It has to start now. So let's start with what my personal recovery means to me. My sobriety date is 7/27/2013. That's my personal recovery date. And for 7 years, what recovery meant to me was complete abstinence from all mind-altering substances. And that's even like a toss-up because, you got nicotine, you got caffeine. I smoked cigarettes for the first 2 years of my recovery. And then, was drinking caffeine. So mind-altering substances is even a malleable concept, or somebody could take that and be like, well, you drink caffeine. Just for me, it was anything that I used externally to change my mood because that's where I came from. That's why I used alcohol. That's why I used drugs, because I would feel ways and wouldn't know what to do with those feelings. So I would numb them up with drugs, alcohol, whatever I can get my hands on that would allow me to alter my mood and alter my feeling. I would use that in such a way that I never really dealt with how I truly felt. And then, true to the name of this podcast, you feel that? The reason I named this podcast that, we've talked about this on plenty of episodes of the show, is that I felt very early on that I felt big feelings and big emotions. And I also felt like it didn't seem like everybody was feeling these bigger feelings and big of emotions. And so it was kind of important to me to fit in. Like, I didn't want to be that person that feels like all this stuff and dives as deep as I do at first, because it seemed like not everybody was there. So I felt like unique in a way that it was almost like embarrassing, because like I feel like this burn in my belly, and I just want to be regular, quote unquote, is what I wanted, right? So very early on, I learned how to quell my anxieties, my unpredictable, sometimes unquantifiable sadness, and even times where like I would feel happy and feel joyous, but feel like I didn't deserve to be happy and joyous. So then there was these weird emotions that I couldn't even identify or tell you what those were. I just didn't want none of that. I just didn't want none of that. I wanted to be like the people in the neighborhood that I seen. I wanted to be, I wanted to be hard. I wanted to be stoic. I wanted to be a man, right? So that's a big reason why I used. For me, it was experiential avoidance. Like some people can sip wine and take little sips and have a wine tasting party. For me, like, I want what the wine does. I want the effect so that I can avoid the experience that I'm experiencing, which I know, as we get into later in this podcast episode, is where meditation has come in for me, that allows me to be in the experience. And I'm not even sure how much of how it was that I want to share right now, because this is a podcast where I know you all come to pick up the emotional tools to be able to show up for life on life's terms and be able to get through some of this crazy stuff that life presents to you, especially as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as creatives. So I don't want to get too much into, how crazy it was, but it was wild. It was crazy. I was not always this guy that you see as the host of the show. I was not always the guy that you see on Instagram. I was not always this prolific. I had a bad case of fit-in-itis. I would do a lot of things to fit in and be of a group. And then there was things that I was just floating as well. I'm a teen father, so I had my first kid when I was 15 going on 16, and I think that was a big thing that kept me alive. I think I would go to these lengths and go a little bit too far, like in my mind. Like there was this one time where I was thinking about robbing a gun store, and I was thinking about robbing it without a gun. And the I guess the end goal being like, but then when I have all the guns, like I could sell guns. Like it's like, what was I doing, right? But it was moments like that I had my foot on the gas pedal like crazy and just going. And then it would be moments like that I would think of my kid and like, but damn, if something happened to me, who gonna take care of him? Who gonna look out for him? And then I'd ease off the gas pedal a little bit more. And then I'd press on the gas pedal again. And it was, just this process of trying to figure myself out. And unfortunately, in some of these areas, like the area that I come from, we don't have any guidance, and we live by a set of rules, and we come in and we go out quick. I didn't think I was going to make it past 18. When I made it to 21, I was like, it felt like I was in a midlife crisis. Like, whoa, I didn't think I'd make it this far. Like, how did I get here? And what do I do now? Like, it felt like, I have no direction. I don't know where it is I'm going. I don't even know what purpose is. I maybe had a twinkling of trying to ask myself, like, what do I desire? But I didn't even know how to ask the question. So a lot of like misguidedness, a lot of experiential avoidance, a lot of just hood shit, because that's where I come from. Confusion, the opposite of clarity. And really, I didn't even know that clarity existed. See, there's this thing. There's a culture of people that just float, that don't know that there's anything to reach for intentionally. And I come from that culture, where every day, like, you wake up and you go outside and you go to the porch, and your next door neighbor comes and tells you who got killed last week, and you turn on the news and the news is pumped out to you as everybody getting killed, everybody getting hurt, and there's so much fear, anxiety, trauma, and we live in these areas where this is the water. Like, I know if you've listened to an episode of this podcast before, we talk about the fish in the water. The guy asks the fish, "How's the water?" The fish says, "What water?" What water? It isn't until the fish jumps out of the water and sees that, a whole world exists outside of this water, that he can even begin to conceptualize that he's living in something. I was living in a life where, like, because I was in it, I couldn't conceptualize that it was something to be in. I didn't know about trauma. I didn't know about PTSD. I didn't know about anxiety. I didn't know about any of these things. I was just experiencing it. I was of it. It was me. And drugs is a normal thing. Drugs is a normal thing to deal with this. Everybody smoking. You go to the barbecue, everybody got something to drink. Everybody got that cousin or auntie or uncle that, he tripping again, right? And there's a stigma around addiction. You can't really ask for help, because no matter what it is you want, if you go past the level of drinking and smoking, like, oh, you a crackhead. Oh, yeah, crackhead Joe, crackhead Bob, oh, man, there you go again. Oh, crackhead Bob. Low key, though, we have mental health issues. We're dealing with addiction, but we dismiss that because it's a shame to the family, or we dismiss that because, there's so much other trauma to deal with. We don't got time for you and your addiction. Just control it. Just not do it. Just put it to the side. Just put it down. Why you can't put it down? You weak as hell. So we're not going to come out and say, look, I think I got this problem. I think I got this issue. I'm doing these things and I can't stop doing them. We're not going to say that, because then we'll be considered weak, especially as black men. I'm not going to tell you I'm struggling with drugs and alcohol. Why I'm going to say that? You automatically going to think I'm weak. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to pretend like I got it all under control until I don't. I'm going to pretend like I got it all under control until it's to the point to where I can't hide it anymore. And then I'm labeled a crackhead. It's a crazy cycle. It's a crazy cycle. And I think what's important is that people speak up more about it. People speak up more about it and use their platform to speak up more about these things that exist, so that we can destroy this shit. If you need help, ask for help. If you need help, ask for help. There are resources, and free resources. And you are not a crackhead. You are somebody that just like anybody can get. You're just caught up in some shit. And it's important for you to understand that there is support for you. Free support at that. And it's not too late. It's not too late. There is no such thing as somebody who cannot find redemption. Like, another reason I would use drugs and alcohol, I was the type to use like a scientist, right? Look, I know you was vibing and I hate to interrupt your flow. We're going to get right back to the episode in a second. But I interrupt the program for good reasoning. Look, if you are here listening to You Feel That, the absolute best emotional, mental, and spiritual empowerment podcast for creatives and entrepreneurs, chances are you're either being called to build something and are looking for where to start. You've already defined what it is that you're looking to build and are currently fleshing that out. And you're here looking for encouragement, motivation, and more context for yourself and your business to help you to continue to manifest. Or maybe you've been around the block a few times. You've taken something from ideation to creation. And you know, in order to stay on top of your game and continue to win, you have to stay sharp. And you're here to make sure that you're perpetually the sharpest tool in the shed. So I got to thinking, what is one common problem that all three of these people share? Number one, knowing who we are. We don't know who we are. Even when you achieve something, even when you accomplish something, it can be hard to figure out who we are, because once we accomplish something, things change. Life continuously changes. And in those changes, we continuously change. We cannot stay the same or else we become obsolete. And look, I could just hear your ears perking up. You may not know who you are right now in this season of your life. And number two, where we're going. Whether this is your first time setting out on your entrepreneurial adventure or you're a veteran who spent the block a few times, the destination always changes, because when we get there, there's somewhere else to go. And then when we get there, there's somewhere else to go. So a process that allows for us to have a finger on the pulse of our internal compass, regardless of what the external circumstances are, is invaluable to our process of building anything great. All right, I hear your ears perking up again. You don't have a process. So look, you don't know who you are and you don't have no process. What if I told you I wrote a manual to help you discover these things within yourself? I hear those ears perking up again. The Handbook, a pocket guide for creating your desired reality and being a good human while you're at it, is available for purchase right now. Within this book, we dig into and develop a foundation within ourselves of perception, gratitude, understanding, completion, all of the timeless principles that will help you to discover your path for the first time or for the 12th time. This book will help you find yourself or remember who you are, as well as get clear on the pathway towards what it is you're looking to create. If this sounds like something you could benefit from, you need to go ahead and grab your copy. Head on over to brycethe3rd.com/the handbook. The link is conveniently located in the podcast description below, wherever you're looking at or listening to this podcast. You can even go on Amazon and search on Amazon The Handbook by Bryce the Third and grab your copy. When I first got started on my entrepreneurial journey, I wish I had a handbook to help me discover who it is that I am and where it is that I'm going. And now you got one. Grab your copy of the handbook today and unlock the key to your clarity in business and in life. All right, back to the show. Like, so if I needed to be strong, I'd pop a Vicodin. If I needed to be laid back, I'd pop a Xanax. If I need to, be talkative, I'd drink some alcohol. If I need to be creative, I'd smoke some weed. If I needed to have fun, I'd pop some ecstasy. If I needed to, it wouldn't be about the thing, like it wouldn't be about the specific drug. It'd be about what it was that I felt like I needed to feel, what it was that I felt like I needed to show up as. And it just became this thing where it's like, I really felt like I lived in a bottle. I felt like I was a shell of a man, and I felt like I needed things externally to even be expressed at all, period. And so it got to a point to where I wake up in the morning, and if I didn't pop my little combination of my little cocktail, I didn't even exist. I used to, my bro used to live with me, and I used to be so jealous of my bro being able to wake up and my girl at the time being able to wake up, and I would be jealous of the birds chirping. Like, damn, like y'all can get up and chirp and don't need nothing to get you up. And I would feel like if I felt like a shell of a man. For me, a big catalyst to change was my daughter being born. I don't want to place this all on my daughter, because if my recovery hinged upon my daughter, like I'd be drunk right now. We can't hinge our recovery on people. Like, people do play a role, but we can't hinge our recovery on people, because people are people. People are people. And sometimes my daughter's gonna have a bad day, and if my recovery hinged upon her and her will, like her happiness, like, I'd be drunk because she ain't happy all the time, and that's cool. But it's got to be for me. Anyways, when my daughter was born, 2012, the world was supposed to end that year, remember? The Mayan calendar. Actually, my world began to begin. Not to get too poetic, but when my daughter was born, she was born, and she gave me this look when she was born, like with her eyes, and she was looking for something. And I felt like she was like looking into my soul, like she needed me to be something. And at that point, like I was at the shell of a man stage, and whatever it was she was looking for, like I knew I didn't have it. Whatever she needed from me, I knew I couldn't give it to her. I knew I couldn't be that. And that was like one of the first catalysts that was like, yo, something got to change. I don't know what got to change, but something got to change, because I can't keep doing this. And it would be 3 more years before I actually would go about doing what it is that made my life change from that moment. But that was a big moment that like really was like a straw on the camel's back. It wasn't the one that broke the back, but it was a straw on the camel's back. And it was just so much for so long that it just felt like it just kept going. And I kept becoming more and more uncontrollable. it kept becoming more and more of a task to keep up with what it is that I needed. Like my bank account was always empty. I never had enough. I would always, it would always start with like, so a big thing for me was like Xanax and at that point it was Vicodin, it might be Percocet now. I don't know, I'm out the loop. But like I would, I was busting scripts. Like I go to different doctors and it was like prescription fraud or whatever, right? Like, so I would go to different doctors and bust different prescriptions. And I would have like, okay, I would play myself like, okay, I will set this much aside for this week, and this is how many I'm gonna do this week, and that way, like, and you do the numbers, and it's like, okay, so it's 90 of them for the month supply. If I split them like this for 4 weeks, then I'll be good to go, and I'm straight until I go back to the doctor again. And it never failed, and I could have took a lie detector test when I separated them like how I separated them, and it never failed. By the end of the week, everything was gone. Everything was gone. I was out of control. I was out of control. These things that I needed outside of myself for me to be me were no longer sustainable. They were no longer sufficient. So I wasn't sufficient. I couldn't keep up with myself because myself was in these pill bottles. Myself was in this weed bag. Myself was in this alcohol. Like, it was so much that I was looking for from these external things that I couldn't afford. I couldn't keep up with it. And when we're talking about opiates and prescription pills, I must point out that this is something I do a lot of work in substance use and alcoholism. This is a moment which I'm glad that it didn't end up that way for me. But this is a moment where it's hard to keep up with how costly these prescription pills are, these prescription opioids are. But heroin cheap. Let me just do some heroin. I know I said I'd never do it. I know I said I hate needles. I know I said blah, blah, blah. But let me just see what it's talking about, because I need something and I can't afford this anymore. This is way too expensive and this cheap as hell. Like, this is how it happens, guys and girls. People say that we'll never do this thing, and then we go down the spiral, and then we end up doing these things that we said that we'd never do. Addiction is a scary thing. It's a scary, uncontrollable thing. And I feel like, especially in the black space, like, we don't talk about it as much as we should, because we're so quick to dismiss the people that are experiencing it and going through it. And I think we need to talk about how somebody with innocent intentions can go down this rabbit hole, which can lead them to shooting heroin, smoking crack cocaine. This is a conversation we need to have, and we need to have it in public. But it got to a point for me where I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't know what to ask for. This is the crazy thing. So now, like, I got my hands on all these different resources for people with substance use and alcoholism issues. But when I was looking for help, like, I had to search for like a month and a half. One, I didn't know how to ask for help because I didn't know what I was going through. Like, I didn't know nothing about addiction. I knew it was an issue. I knew that I was doing this thing, and that when I didn't have it, I was tweaking, and that I couldn't stop. But I didn't know that benzodiazepine, just like alcohol, the alcohol and benzos are the only drugs that when in withdrawal you can die from. Crack cocaine, heroin, it'll feel like you're going to die, but you're not going to die. But alcohol and benzodiazepine in withdrawal, you could seize out and die if you don't have it. If you built up this certain tolerance and you go cold turkey. I didn't know this stuff. I didn't even know what to ask for. Like, I didn't even know how to ask for help. So I'm going to I'm going to my primary care physician. I'm going to the emergency room when I'm really going through it. I'm reaching out to my kid's mom's mom for help. And like, I just don't have no reference point. I don't know. And everybody is really like, what's crazy was everybody was really showing up with more of the drugs, right? Like, oh, well, let me give you a little bit of this to help with the withdrawal. Or like, I would go to the emergency room and they'd give me like a little tiny dose of benzodiazepine, whatever it was, Ativan or whatever it was, and then send me on my way. And it's like, yo, like, I need help. I don't want any more drugs. Like, I don't want to go back into this cycle. Like, I don't know what to do. And then I would feel like I'm not a man, like a man who is supposed to be able to have control over these things, who is supposed to be able to show up and like, I felt like I had this costume on, like I had to put this costume on that I was all good because everybody expected me to be. But in all actuality, when I was asking for help, like, I didn't even know how to ask for help. And it felt like I had to humble myself to be able to do it. So like, I'd do it once, and then when people would just give me a little bit of the drug and then send me on my way, I'd be like, damn, well, I guess maybe I am tripping. Maybe I'm not going through what it is that I think I'm going through. Maybe I do got this. And then I get my ass beat again and figure out like, yo, I need to ask for help. And I went to my primary care physician, and she sent me on my way with a paper that says, I think you're an addict. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but that don't sound good. That sound like crackhead in the hood. Like that sound like crackhead in the community. It sound like you're judging me. And so, okay, I'm not looking at this paper. Fuck you. Fuck you. I'm gonna go about my life then. So I had to restart about 13, I wouldn't say 13, but a good like 7 or 8 times before it. And this was like at the very end where like I'm sitting in my room and my kids are coming in. They're young at this point, and they're coming in and they're, daddy this, daddy that. And I'm like, I can't even do it. Just close the door. I'm going through withdrawal. Like I'm going through it. Like I can't even be there for you. I can't get my daughter a bath. I can't do none of this. And it's like, yo, like son got to shake. And at this point, like I have my little breaking case of emergency container. And it's got like, my last little bit of Xanax, my last little bit of like my combination of shit. It's got my last little bit in there. And it's like, look, I'm going to use this only when I'm ready to like really seek help. Because otherwise I'm not even getting out this bed. I'm not going out the door. Like, so I would use this, like this was all I had. I ain't had no money. I'm in a negative in my bank account. Like I've drained everything. I've drained all my resources, people who I could borrow, like my pill people and all the people I can go to. Like, let me hold this until, I get my check. Like I've expended all those resources, and now I got this little breaking case of emergency. So wonderfully, beautifully, synchronistically, at this time I was working at a automotive plant. I'm here in Detroit, and it's one of the big 3. I don't want to put them on blast because I'll be blasting their ass on this show. I know I do, but not because they're a bad company, but because that it just didn't align with my spirit. But this was a beautiful thing about working there. They had this thing called the employee, the ESSP. It was like employee assistance program, or the EAP, the employee assistance program. And I had this counselor through there that I would go see every now and then, just for like random things that I would make up. Like, oh, I'm getting into it with my girl. Oh, like I'm depressed. Oh, my auntie passed and this is what I'm going through. But really, I think underneath all that, what I was trying to say to her was like, I need help. Like I really, really, really need help. But I didn't know how to say it. So it would be all these existential things, these circumstances like, oh, I had to come to see you because, I got in trouble on the line at work because they this and they that. And, just like these existential, things outside of myself. But I set up an appointment with her. I got to go see her. And because this was my last, like, look, I don't care if I got to barricade the door. Like, I'm going to communicate that I need something. So I went to this meeting. It was a meeting with this counselor. And, I proceeded to tell her, I need help. I need help. And she felt like her words was like, oh, I wish I could prescribe you. I wish I was a prescribing doctor because I will prescribe you what it is that, you need. I'm like, I don't want any drugs, madam. I don't want no drugs. I don't want drugs. I don't want any more of what it is that I have. I don't know what I want, but I don't want any more of that. That is beating my ass. I'm going to die. I don't know what I want. I need help. And she asked me, she said, you willing to go somewhere? I'm like, whatever, whatever. Like, I don't care. So she called a place, Maple Grove, here in Michigan, and they had 1 bed left that day. And I often think back, like, what if they didn't have a bed left that day? Like, what if I had to wait a week? What if I had to wait 2 weeks? I've worked with people doing recovery coaching and have had to turn people away because their insurance, or they'll be on a waiting list. And it's like, wow, what if I had to wait? What if I had to wait? Anyways, so she put me on the phone with the people. They had 1 bed left. They was like, yeah, bring some quarters for the washing machine. I'm like, wait, am I going to jail? What is going on? I ain't know nothing about rehab, but I went. And it was really like the best time I ever had in my life at that point. And, I went, I had my first non-substance induced laugh. I went in there, it was a great group of people, and everybody was like really serious about this recovery thing. And, we all exchanged numbers, and, to this day, like maybe there's one of us that is still, that shares my sobriety date. I know at least one of us that died, and she died pretty tragically. Addiction is crazy, man. But that was I wouldn't have known how to ask for it, but the way that I was led there, it was like, oh, and I was on fire from that point on. I got home. And while I was in rehab, they told me the first day that you get out, when you get out, make sure that you hit a meeting, a 12-step meeting. We had all these 12-step meetings we were going to while we were in there. While I was in there, I was going to Narcotics Anonymous because I related to narcotics more because like I wasn't drinking as much. Like I was doing a lot of prescription pills. I would drink a little bit, but when I got out, the only meeting I could make it to was an AA meeting, especially at the time that I was going. And it's like, look, I'm not about to be a statistic. They told us, they said, out of everybody here was like 50 of us, only 3 people are going to maintain their sobriety. And the way that you can be in the statistic of the people who maintain their sobriety is to go to a meeting. That's how you up your chances the day that you get out of rehab. So I'm like, I'm going. So the only meeting I can get to was an AA meeting. And I went. And, it was this great group of individuals still to this day. It's my weekly Monday AA meeting that I go to. And everybody was just smiles and laughter and community. And I'm like, ain't none of y'all drinking? Ain't none of y'all getting high? And they're like, nah. And then you hear people had, this many years. And it's like, okay. And I often make the joke, like that somebody could have brought out a bucket of moldy crackers from the back. And it's like, this how we stay sober. And I would have ate it because I was desperate at that point. Like I was ready for whatever y'all had that wasn't what it was that I came from. But luckily they didn't have a bucket of moldy crackers. They had a program of recovery for me. And I proceeded to implement this 12-step program of recovery. And it helped me to build a foundation. It helped me to build a spiritual foundation, which led me to a lot of the spiritual cultivation that led me to the person that you know now. The person who could run a show about, mastering our emotions and the spirituality surrounding this. And all of the stuff that I spew out is in direct correlation to those early days, 12-step affiliation and what I've learned from recovery. So on that note, I think it's important for me to say that if you need help, reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. I know there's a lot of stigma around it in certain communities, but you're not alone and you are not a bad person for experiencing the experience that you're experiencing. It is not uncommon to have that experience. And as somebody who has experienced that experience and came out on the other side of that experience and continues to develop and grow and increase the quality of his life, like I'm here. Reach out. Reach out to You Feel That the podcast on Instagram. Reach out. You see all these ways to get a hold of me. Let me know that if you're going through it, and however I can help, however I can send you to different resources. And we'll get into a lot of the resources on the next episode because I think we're at like the 30-minute mark probably on this episode, and I want to hold you all too long. But let's do a part 2. So next week we'll have a part 2 on the other side of my recovery journey, where it's like, okay, what happens when you enter recovery and begin to get intentional for the first time? Yeah, let's do that. As always, if you can head over to Apple Podcasts, leave me a rating and review, one of those paragraph reviews that let people know that you are a raving fan or that you heard something that really stuck out to you. I know when I go and listen to podcasts, like I look at those, like the things that people say, and it's like, okay, that dictates, like if I see 6 or 7 or 8, or if I see 20 like reviews and everybody wrote something, okay, let me listen to this podcast, see what it's talking about. That is social proof, and it does so much for the show when you go to Apple Podcasts, leave a rating, sure, but also that review part where you leave the words, that means the world and a half to me. I'm working on a lot of cool things, some one-on-one coaching offerings, some in-person events here in Detroit and around the country, as well as different challenges and whatnot like that. So the quickest way to get roped into that is to text 313-254-5972. Text YO to 313-254-5972, and you'll get roped in with all the cool things that I'm creating to help you to invest in yourself, your emotional wellness, your mental wellness, your entrepreneurial wellness, your empowerment, your spiritual empowerment. We're going crazy, and I want you to stay in tune with everything that we got going on. I'll catch you next week on part 2 of this episode. You're not going to want to miss it because we're going to get into a lot of the resources, and I'm going to put some of the same resources in this episode too, in case you're one of the ones who only listens to part 1 of a 2-part episode. I still want you to know that there's some things that you could take advantage of if you are yourself struggling with alcoholism and substance use. And I'm going to put those resources in the podcast description wherever you're listening to or watching this episode. As always, be intentional, love on each other, and have compassion for your process. And I will see you next time on You Feel That with Bryce the Third.